Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Peachy Talks with Prince George Daily News, and it's all things election these days. So with us today we have a special guest, and Mike Morris, who's the Liberal candidate for Prince George-Mackenzie, and we also have a regular panelist, Chuck Nisbett, with us, and Tracy Calageros, and Todd Corrigal couldn't make it today, so it's just going to be the three of us, and we will talk about all things election. So Mike, over to you. Why are you running? What the heck's going on here?
Yeah, no, thanks, Bill. So with the BC Liberals, we're a different organization than the federal Liberals. There's no affiliation at all. So just make that point clear. It's caused a lot of concern with some of the voters out there. I have unfinished work, and I think from a practical perspective, first off. When I got elected in 2013, I had never, politics was never in my bucket list of things to do. It was the furthest thing from my mind. I was helping Pat Bell out with his riding association, and when I was asked, my first response was to say no, but he asked me to think about it, and after a couple of weeks, I couldn't come up with a legitimate reason to say no. So I went into my first period there, 2013 to 2017. Learning the ropes on politics and being nonpartisan most of my life because of the work that I had with the RCMP. It took a little bit to ramp up and to understand how the whole legislative process works. But with that knowledge now, and then of course, the second term we had was in opposition, which gives you a whole different perspective on things as well. As when you're in government, particularly a government that was in as long as we were, the 16 years there, you get stuck in a governmental rut, I think. And you need an opportunity to get up on top of that rut and have a look around and just see where the trail goes. And if there's no trail, then you have to find one. So that's where we were. And I think now that I've had an opportunity to look around, I've got a vision for public safety, integrated public safety. I'm an advocate for biodiversity management. There's a number of things that I want to help do as we move into the future. I always look 20, 30 years down the road. I want to have to ensure that this world is a better place for my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and generations looking forward. So all of those collectively form a reason for me to carry on.
Right on. So campaigning so far. Well, let's start off with the debate, since that's the most recent thing in the campaign, I guess, that grabbed everyone's attention. What was your thoughts on the debate? Certainly a little nicer than the one we've seen from down south, and what's your take on what was accomplished there and what wasn't accomplished there?
Well, of course, we're a totally different country than down south. Our constitution, our charter is different, and we're always a very polite society anyways up here for the most part. But, the debate went well. Andrew was able to get his points across with our platform. I thought Sonia did very well, for the Green Party and helping to put them on the map as well. So, a lot of things got revealed during the debate the other night. I think the public has a pretty good idea where all three parties stand with different issues. And it gives us all kinds of opportunity to speak about it with our own voter base here in Prince George-Mackenzie.
Chuck, any follow-up on that? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a few things. Seeing as you're in the Prince George-Mackenzie riding, and I know you must have had a lot of time and energy involved with the Site C site, that project. What are your thoughts on Site C personally, and how you see it going forward? I mean, there's been a call for, I think it's the Utilities Commission that has said that they need it to be halted and reassessed for safety and for land impact. What do you feel about that, Mike?
That's a good topic. When I first got elected in 2013, it was very topical. No decision had been made to move forward on that. And I was a fence sitter. Yeah, I wasn't sure whether it should go ahead at that particular time or not. But then there was a number of studies that were done independent of government, and they were presented to us as a caucus. caucus when we were in government. And we had a significant debate about that before it even got to the cabinet table for approval. And the debate was swinging both ways, but once we had a close look at that, the one report, and I can't remember the firm that did that off the top of my head right now, but it swayed me. I thought, they had some very valid reasons for it to go ahead. The financial aspect of it made a lot of sense. The future of British Columbia and the power needs made a lot of sense for us to move in that direction. So I was very comfortable when we looked at it, and I put my affirmation behind that at that particular time. It was a big decision to make, but I think it was the right decision overall. And just like any major engineering project, the dams of the past or bridges, doesn't matter what you build, even a house. You start building it and you'll come across something that needs to be looked at again by an engineer or by an architect and redesigned to meet whatever the problem was. The same thing applies for Site C, and there is nothing in the world that engineers can't accomplish if they put their mind to it. Now, there'll be a dollar figure attached to it, and I think the public should be made aware of what that dollar figure might be at the end of the day. But I have full confidence in the quality of people that we have working on it, the quality of the engineers we have working on it, and it will get done. Just like I said, when I was in the RCMP, if we needed somebody to jump over a 20-story building, there's somebody in the world that we can find to go and do that. And the same thing applies for engineering or any other problem that we face in society. There's somebody that has the expertise to help direct us through that.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But as I said, they've seemed to be looking now for a little more clarification on the problems with the site. Do you know if there's anything going forward to slow things down or have that examination done?
Well, again, I've had great confidence in what they do up there, and I don't think that any of the issues that are presented to the Site C folks right now are insurmountable. It has been looked at, and I don't think it should be slowed down. If it slows down, it's going to cost us more money at the end of the day. And we've already got a lot of money into that facility already. It's well underway. It can't be stopped. So let's just fix the problem and get it built and get it up and running, so that we can power all these brand new electrical vehicles that people are going to be buying through the province here.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot.
Do you think that Mr. Horgan kind of sidestepped that during the debate? Because I think he just kind of pushed it off to saying that there's going to be a report coming and the decision to be made then. So
I do, and for probably obviously political reasons, but there's no doubt, having sat in cabinet before, I know that cabinet would be up to speed on every single aspect of that project the second that it happens. There's nothing that would be held back. The minister would be aware of it, and he in turn would advise everybody else on the executive council about that. So they've been aware of these issues for a long time, and to act like it's a surprise right now is purely political.
Right on. Moving on to the other big one from the Liberal Party, you guys have promised to cut the PST to zero for a year and then move it back to 3% for a year to help with the pandemic. You obviously support that. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you hope to achieve with that?
Well, yeah, that's an immediate relief to a lot of companies around British Columbia, small businesses. 98% of the businesses in BC are small businesses. And by reducing or eliminating the PST for a year, it does give them a bit of financial relief so that they can hopefully keep their businesses solvent until the economy gets rolling and things people get back on their feet again. And the PST is something that everybody, right from the individual who's buying goods wherever they might be, other than groceries, of course, they're paying PST. So, if we can keep a nickel in their jeans, make things a little bit better for them over the coming year, then all the better. And it also goes, that's the advice that we've been hearing from various groups across British Columbia now for a couple of years, is we need to do something with the PST, perhaps cut it in half. And so this is a step in that direction. Of course, That comes under, at the same time we're introducing the Fair Tax Commission. That's going to be looking at all taxes in British Columbia to make sure that we have the fairest, most equitable kind of a tax system that we need. At the same time, we're not reducing any of the services that we have obligations to with respect to health, social services, or the general welfare of people in this province.
But can you do that by taking anywhere from $6 to $8 billion out of the provincial budget?
Yeah, we're going to be running a deficit. There's no question about it, and we've had the advice of some very learned people from the economical side. We haven't seen a worldwide or international economy like we've seen since the Second World War. And so we're in this recovery period. We will be in this recovery period for 3 or 4 or 5 or more years. So we need to invest, and we'll be running deficits as we reinvest in people and our province and get people working and get our economy up and running again. If we look back in history, the U.S. invested heavily after the Second World War, and a lot of those investments put them at the top of the world with respect to their economy. The interstate highway system was built, a number of hydro projects were built, and so I think we should be looking at the same kind of a strategy to get BC up and running again as well.
Yeah, Chuck?
Well, yeah, I'm still a bit concerned about the amount of money that's going to be involved in a PST cut. Especially with the government payments and things that have been going on with the COVID. And the BC government is committed to a considerable amount of payments to people as well. So how long do you think it would take to recover from something like that? The length of time involved in bringing back the deficit that we're going to run for a couple of years, and how long do we see that taking?
Well, if we look at what's going on right now as a result of COVID, there's a number of companies out there. I forgot what the ratio was, but I think it's well over 20 or 30% that are on the verge of insolvency in the province, anyways, and that's going to put thousands of people out of work.
Yeah.
So, the PST, we collected around $7 billion in PST last year. We might do fairly well this year because everybody had all these different CERB payments and whatnot coming in. But next year will be a different story. So if we don't do something to regenerate and get businesses up and running and get people working, if we kept on with the existing system, our PST intake would probably be half of what it is today anyways. And so I think this is an investment in the future. If we have to go through this for, I've heard some economists say it's going to take us 5 years to start showing some positive side of the ledger book, so be it. But I think if we can come out of this at the end of the day with everybody working that wants to work in this province and build some infrastructure along the way, I think we'll be in pretty good shape in the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Switching up a bit, we have a question from a viewer, James Douglas, who wants to know what you will do to protect primary old growth forests.
Yeah, that's been a passion of mine. Many listeners and many folks know that I've been a trapper for over 40 years in the province, and I've witnessed the loss of biodiversity right across the province, but particularly in my trap line, the impact that it has on all various wildlife species. We have a crisis in our province with steelhead salmon stock, with salmon depletion, a number of things, and mature forest is vital in the entire spectrum of biodiversity management. So I would like to see us concentrate more on what they call it a managed forest. Some people refer to it as a converted forest, in trying to find the balance in our new plantations, so that we can reestablish wildlife populations as well, but also have a viable forest sector that concentrates on that. We don't have much old growth forest left. If you look at, I often refer people to have a look at the Google Earth Engine time lapse. It's available on the website, and you can look anywhere in the world, but I concentrate on British Columbia. And it's a time lapse of all the clear-cut logging that's taken place from 1984 until 2019. and it's breathtaking when you have a look at it. So we have a lot of work to do there, and I think whatever we can do to maintain as much of the natural forest and mature forests that we have left, I think we should be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked actually. I came in from Alberta in 1991, and I was blown away at the amount of trees here, first off. And then over the last, like, I'm an avid fly fisher, and over the last 15 years or so, I am amazed at the number of clear cuts that have shown up, and the inroads that the logging roads and things have made into the old growth forest. It's quite incredible, and that's a big worry. It really is.
No, it is for sure. BC will still have a viable forest industry. We just have to look at it differently. We adopted the sustained yield strategy back in 1945 from the Royal Commission at that particular time. And at that time, everybody thought a rotation was based on 120 years here in the interior and maybe slightly less down in Vancouver Island in the southern part of the province. And with technology and the advent of the pulp mills, we got away from select logging in the 60s and started clear-cut logging in the 60s. And, we started logging more volume. We went from about 20 million cubic meters a year in the early 60s up to about 80 million cubic meters a year of wood harvested in the province, which is substantial. And we've pretty much maintained that every year since. So it has had an impact on the forests in British Columbia. And so maybe we have to have a look and see how we're going to adapt to smaller wood. You look at the trees. I've seen pictures of logging in the Lower Mainland and Vancouver Island back around the 1900s, and these trees are huge. The one tree would probably contain, maybe 5 or 7 cubic meters of wood. Our interior mature forest that we've been logging up here, the average log would be a cubic meter. If we look at what's coming in with our converted forest or our managed forest, I think it's going to take us 6 or 7 or 8 trees to make a cubic meter of wood. So we're looking at a different forest system. We're looking at probably the use of a lot of polymers to build engineered wood. And as we move into the future, because we won't have wood big enough to cut the stuff that we have in the past.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chuck.
Well, I can see that. And is there a shift towards more of the engineered wood, and is there a market for it now that we can push forward and try and build so that we can leave some of that older growth forest still going and wait for our newly planted stuff to come up? Is there something we can do to push towards more engineered wood product?
I think it is, Chuck. Engineered wood products are in demand all around the world. I look at East Fraser Fibre in Mackenzie. They've been running a remanufacturing plant. And when I first got elected, I visited all these various plants around the province, but they get more dollar from a piece of engineered wood that's glued together with finger joints than you do with a regular 2x4, for an example. And because it's straight, it's true, it's in demand, particularly in the southern US. We have an opportunity up here, and I look at Mackenzie as an example. It's been force dependent since it was built, because that was the reason Mackenzie came around. The Wilson Dam was built, the Wilson Reservoir was established, and Mackenzie ended up with pulp mills and lumber mills and what have you. But with the harvesting, with the spruce beetle in particular, it's really affected our midterm timber supply. We have to look ahead more than the next 5 years. And for Mackenzie, that's going to be a critical period of time. We have a twin pipeline that is destined to be built there to supply gas for the Kitimat LNG plant that may go ahead after the LNG Canada one is built. That's a twin 48-inch pipeline that goes right through Mackenzie. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to establish a straddle plant in Mackenzie, establish an ethylene plant in Mackenzie, and put hundreds, if not thousands, of people back to work. We've got power, we've got everything that we need there to do that, and convert Mackenzie from primarily forestry community to one of a diversified economy with mining, like we have Mount Milligan, we have other opportunities up there, but petrochemicals as well.
Right on. We do have a comment from Cecile Harvey who says, save our moose, but we'll get to that a little bit later. When you're talking still on forestry, when you talk about changing how the forestry, how we work in the forest, what are your thoughts on volume-based tenures as opposed to area-based tenures? It's debate been going on in this province for probably 30 years about which is better. What do you think?
I'm a fan of area-based tenures. Volume-based, I think we don't get the same care on the land base that we would with an area base. And it's interesting, I had a number of complaints fielded from constituents when I was still the parliamentary secretary of Forests and Lands. And it was a number of operators, licensees that were out there, and one company would leave a wildlife patch and riparian area or whatever it was, and another company would come in and take it. And there was ribbons over top of ribbons over top of ribbons is the way it was put. So I invited a lot of the woodland managers into my office, and we had a great discussion. But one of the particular chaps in there started talking about a TFL that the company had. And when he talked about it, his voice changed, his demeanor changed, everything changed. And one of his colleagues said, listen to you, he said, it sounds like you're talking about the family farm. And I said, well, just hold that thought. That's the way we should be looking at it. It is the family farm. It's our farm. It's British Columbia's farm. And we need to treat it as such. And we can't look at it as an agricultural farm because there's more than just a tree growing on it. There's moose, there's fur bearers, there's all kinds of birds that are in there as well. So we need to find that balance in how we move forward so that we evaluate the trees. We already do. We put a value on fiber. We put a value on minerals and oil and gas, but we don't put a value on our wildlife. We don't put a value on the protein value of the moose that we harvest and all the ungulates that we harvest, the trout that we catch, the fowl that we use, the blueberries, the huckleberries, everything that we pick. And I think it's time that we started including everything in there so that we can find that proper balance in our harvesting and resource techniques.
So when you talk about these things, when you were in cabinet, were you the lone voice who talked about more holistic? Because it kind of goes contrary to some of what we've done in the past, right?
Yeah, it's my job is to convince my colleagues of things that are going on in my riding, and let them know what the issues are in my particular riding across the province. And when Christy Clark asked me to conduct a provincial survey of wildlife habitat across the province, I had my eyes opened even more. I thought it was just sort of around my own trapline area and the area that I was familiar with from the 1970s onwards. But so I've been making presentations to my colleagues every year since I got elected in 2013 on the issues that we're facing and the problems that we are coming across as a result of habitat degradation across the province here. I think I'm making inroads on that, and I will keep pushing that. I also understand I'm part of a big team, and most of our team is situated in the urban centers in British Columbia. So I've got a lot of convincing to do to let people know what's going on in my neighborhood versus their neighborhood.
Yeah, I gotta say I like the idea of the family farm as opposed to the big conglomerate farm being running through everything. I really do believe that's the way we have to look at things in our province to make things sustainable and still stay profitable. The corporate farm idea has grown a lot especially in North America and Asia as well in the last 20, 30 years. And I just don't see it being sustainable. I don't think it's the way to go. We really have to go back to that family husbandry kind of approach to things.
You know, there is a way forward. I don't know exactly what that looks like. It's going to take everybody involved, industry, government, and the communities themselves to figure out a way forward through this. But, you know, one of the biggest things I hear from the forest sector is that they're no longer competitive internationally. And my thoughts are that, you know, we've been competitive solely because we've had the volume. We've had these large trees that we can cut down and produce a lot of lumber and products from that. But we can't compete with the southern US that has over 13 million hectares of pine or conifer forest, mostly pine, that are managed. So it's a managed forest, but they can grow a marketable tree in 15 to 25 years. We can't grow a marketable tree in this part of the world. It takes us 80 years to grow that marketable tree. Some say 60, but I say 80 years. But we're competing with the southern US, we're competing with Costa Rica, we're competing with New Zealand, we're competing with a number of jurisdictions around the world that can do that, but we can't. But on the other hand, we had some of the best fiber in the world, you know, the close growth rings on it. There's a number of things that made the fiber in British Columbia superior around the world. And we can get there, but it's going to take us a long time to kind of rebuild those stocks. So in the meantime, how do we operate with our converted forest and still have a viable forest industry? We're not going to have the large volumes that we've been seeing in the past. We're not going to have these mills unless we absolutely ship everything to one center location in the province here. But a mill that can consume 2 million cubic meters worth of wood in the year, I think those days are going to be short-lived once we get through the dead spruce that's out there and start rebuilding our stocks.
So what do we see as the way forward for this region then? Because it sounds like forestry is going to take a hit, and it's taken a hit, and I think it's going to be ongoing for a while at least. What do you see on the horizon that we can bring up to take up those that economic weight, and where we can direct people into and try and move forward with?
Well, there's a couple of things here, Chuck, on that. You know, from a purely forestry perspective, we need to involve the communities in, you know, what the area around the community is going to look like from a forestry perspective. I see substantially downsized operations, mills, more value added. You know, we've lost about 45,000 jobs in the forest sector, mostly due to automation. You know, I worked in the bush. My brother-in-law had a Jippo logging outfit back in the Vanderhoof area back in the late 60s. And I worked for him during the summer. We would have a crew of 50 guys putting out maybe a load a day. And we had a little sawmill on site that we cut a few boards with. But the machinery today can just do so much with a handful of men. And a mill can do so much with just a handful of men compared to what we had before. So we can't grow trees fast enough to accommodate the technology and whatnot that we have here. The other aspect that we have to be mindful of throughout this whole area is diversifying our resource economy. And I've been hollering from the rooftops about this now for as long as I've been elected. Is, you know, forestry is one thing, but we have untold opportunities with petrochemicals. That's one of the other areas. You know, Ken James has talked about, or West Coast Oilfield has talked about a plastics plant here. Now, people automatically go to plastic bags and single-use plastics and whatnot, but we have the richest liquids natural gas in the world sitting up in the Montney and the Dawson Creek, Fort St. John area. And we can be taking a couple $1 million a year or a day of product out of the existing line coming through Prince George. And ethylene and polyethylene and the polypropylene with the propane and butane and other products that are in there. When you look at the world today, a jet aircraft is 50% polymers. You know, the plastics in our vehicles, if we're going to have lightweight electrical vehicles in the future, there's a lot of plastic. There's a lot of urethane products that are in those types of vehicles. If we're going to have engineered woods products, because we can't grow trees big enough to make a 2x10 anymore, we're going to have urethane or polyurethane products in that as well. So we need to look at that. We don't have any industry in BC like that right now at the moment, and we have an opportunity to not only build the plants, but perhaps look at some of the the downstream manufacturing opportunities that would stem from that. The other area, you know, I was speaking with a vice president of Boeing here a number of years, well, about a year or so ago, I guess, in Vancouver. And I said, do you know that we've got the third longest runway in Canada sitting in Prince George? And he didn't know that. And I said, we've got Kitimat, aluminum, Rio Tinto Alcan sitting out in Kitimat that produces some of the best aluminum in the world. We've got, you know, the plastics opportunity here with our petrochemical industry coming down the pike. So, you know, it'd be a great place for Boeing to set up an aerospace center here in Prince George and build airplanes or whatever they want to do. So I think we're only limited by our imagination. And the other component of that as well is we have some of the richest gold deposits in the world and mineral deposits in the world in the trench between the Coast Range and the Rocky Mountains from Prince George north up into Yukon and the Alaska. And we need to start looking at those opportunities in addition to rare earth minerals. I'm aware of a couple of rare earth mineral deposits in the vicinity here that have attracted international attention. And when you look at technology and the increased use of these rare earth minerals in technology today, we have a bright future ahead of us in this province.
Yeah, there's certainly lots that can happen. When I first time I met Ken James, and he explained what they were doing, or what they wanted to do, I was kind of like, well, why aren't we doing that already? You know, it just seems like a no-brainer, and that gas pipeline has been there for what, decades. So you kind of wonder why it hasn't happened already. But yeah, sticking with the forest a little bit, let's get to an issue I know that's near and dear to you, and that's the spraying of glyphosate in the forest. You've been kind of on a bit of a campaign the last year or so to stop the spray.
Yeah, no, that's my intent. You know, I'm going to, but I don't do it outside of the team that I'm in. And my job internally is to bring my team along so they finally understand where I'm coming from. You know, one of the guiding principles I use is seek first, understand, and then be understood. So I've been trying to understand why people support the use of glyphosate in the province, and it's purely economic reasons when it comes to, you know, silviculture work. But that's about the only reason that I can see. And it might be economically feasible when you first look at it, but when you look at the downstream aspects of using glyphosate, there's nothing positive about it from a biodiversity perspective. I'm not even going to begin to talk about the scientific side of that because I'll leave that for people much smarter than me. But when I look at the fact that you spray glyphosate on broadleaf plants and everything from the grass on dies. The grass seeds are necessary for the mice and the small rodents and the birds and stuff to sustain them over the winter months and sustain life. It's used in their nesting properties. There's a number of things that we use there. So when we spray glyphosate, we pretty much eliminate all of the wildlife population in that particular area for a long time. You know, I don't know how long it takes to recover in some areas. Lisa Wood is a scientist at the university here, I believe that's her name, has been doing a lot of work on that. And there's a lot of things that we don't understand on the impacts to biodiversity from extended use of glyphosate. So the sooner that we can quit using that, in my view, the better. I know that there's a lot of silviculture guys out there and a lot of tree farm folks out there that disagree with my thinking on this, but it's something that I'm going to continually push forward and hopefully, you know, either get a private member's bill through or have it reflected in the legislature at some point in time in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
It comes back to that balanced management again, you know. You've got to look after the wildlife as well as the trees.
It is, you know, and I wrote about that in my paper that I published in 2015, Getting the Balance Right, and it's on the Flinro website. And you know, I spoke about that then, so it's no surprise. And I know a lot of folks in the forest sector have been a little bit agitated over the position I've taken on that, but it's something that I've seen as a trapper and as an outdoorsman all my life. I see the effects of that, and I think we can do much better as a society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, Mike. Glyphosate and your position on the forest, you're not that far off from. We had Mackenzie Kerr on yesterday, and a lot of what she's talking about. You guys talk a lot of the same, not should say the same stuff, but I think you kind of go down got the same ideas about how things should happen. So
yeah, I think she'd make a great BC Liberal.
There you go.
There you go. After you've retired, though.
Yeah.
Or after Shirley's retired, I should, because she's running and Shirley's right. Yeah. Yeah, she's doing well. So, but moving along here, the other issue that has come up from part of the Liberal platform is, of course, ICBC and opening up the basic rates to competition. Do you think that's really going to help, or is this just a political promise?
No, it's not a political promise. Competition in any respect is healthy. And, by introducing some competition, maybe it'll have ICBC take another look inwards in how they do business and introduce something new. Nobody has ever cornered the market on good ideas as far as I know to date. And so this may generate some different ideas. There's some great models across Canada as to how government-run insurance can operate. Saskatchewan's got some good models there, along with the private sector competition. So let's see what we can do with it, and I'm sure we'll see some good come out of it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that ICBC really could use some shakeup, and I feel that that's a good way of doing it. I can see, coming from Alberta again, and the problems they have there with the competitive insurance system, the balance between the two has to be found. And I'm interested to see if ICBC can find a better balance and make it work here.
They will. It's I was on a course. I took a number of courses years ago on organizational effectiveness, and I was one of the professors that was instructing on the course made a profound statement. And of course, I was in the RCMP at the time, and the RCMP is an institution that's 100 years old. And he said, no organization has the right to exist. And I thought, that couldn't be. I'm in this organization. But he nailed it on the head. No organization has a right to exist unless you offer something to the people that consume your products or that obtain assistance from whatever you're doing. So that's resonated with me, and I've held that in my mind ever since.
Makes a lot of sense. Going on again with the ICBC budgetary constraints and things, there's been a lot of talk about privatization of healthcare in BC. The Liberals have pushed the idea ahead in the past. What are your thoughts on privatization of healthcare?
I think anything that we can do in this province, in this country, to enhance healthcare, we should be doing. We've got backlogs of people waiting for MRIs. We have backlogs of people waiting for surgeries. We have a number of things that we can improve on. And if it includes a mixture of private and public healthcare, then so be it. But there has to be a balance there. I was in the RCMP, and a couple of times I was injured, and I received healthcare immediately because of the contracts that the RCMP had with different healthcare providers. We can't keep police officers, military personnel, and people that provide that critical level of service. We can't keep them off work for 2 years as they're waiting for surgery to repair an injury that they obtained in the course of their work. So I think there's room for both. We just have to find where that balance is once again.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of concern that it would entail large-scale job losses, and that would be another impact on the economy here as well. And it's just a worry that a lot of people have that if, say hospitals were privatized, that wages and things would go down, that kind of thing,
Yeah, no, I don't see that happening, Chuck. Our hospitals are very valued institutions within the province and within government, and that would never happen in the societies that we have right across Canada with the healthcare that we provide here. What I'm talking about more from the private side is there is the odd private surgical center, There's private agencies that offer MRIs and other imaging services, I think that are very helpful. You know, if I can go to an imaging service and have a MRI done or some other image taken of me that I can take to my doctor, that will save a lot of steps for him. It'll save a lot of steps for the system as well. So there's efficiencies that we can find in the existing system if we get out of our little silos that we're in. You know, people that are saying under no circumstances should we have a mixture of private and public health care in the country. Well, I think we need to start looking at that. Our population is getting bigger. Technology is more expensive. We have, you know, a number of things that are leading us to a different model that we should start looking at.
But one of the things that COVID has brought to the fore, I think, was to do with long-term care and how sometimes privatization there, not so much here, but back east, has really been a bad thing, I guess. So how do you reconcile that with some of that privatization? And we do have that here in BC with long-term care and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I do. And I think we still have room in BC for privatized long-term care. We're going to invest heavily in that ourselves as a government. We're going to provide seniors, you know, if any senior wants long-term care and they want a private room, they're going to get it at the end of the day. So we'll build that infrastructure. But, you know, I think the system needs rigorous oversight to make sure that, you know, if we do have a private care system, that they are maintaining the standards that the province sets for the publicly funded ones, and that there's somebody to monitor that and make sure that everything is going as it should. So, you know, I don't know what happened in Ontario. I've heard lots of different things about it, and but in BC we do have a fairly rigorous system. Can we make improvements? You bet. We can always make improvements on any of the systems that we have.
Mm-hmm. Campaigning in a COVID world, how is that? How different is that? And what are the challenges? And what can you do to overcome those?
Well, to get over COVID, it's probably about the only thing.
Yeah.
You know, we participated last night in a all-candidate debate. It was at Theatre Northwest, and only the candidates were allowed on the stage. Charlotte, my assistant, was with me, and she was the only one allowed in the room there. I think there was 4 or 5 people sitting on the stage and 4 or 5 people sitting on the bleachers there. And you're staring off into a black wall. You've got these bright lights shining on you. Nobody's cheering, nobody's jeering, nobody's doing anything. And it felt like we were missing something. And a lot of my days are spent doing exactly what I'm doing right now, talking on Zoom. You know, I probably had 3 or 4 Zoom meetings already this morning, and I'll have more to carry on for the rest of the day. So that's different, but that's the world that we're living in with COVID. Somebody was knocking me about having so many signs up, and I said, well, you know, we can't knock on doors, we can't have face-to-face discussions, so I'm going to throw my signs up so people know that I'm running in this world of COVID that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that there has been a lot of signs. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
Well, I was just going to say that makes perfectly good sense. I know Mackenzie was saying that it's hard to get things and expensive to get things right now, especially with the speed that this election was called.
It is, yeah. You know, this was an unnecessary election. There's nobody that I've spoken to that feel that we needed an election at this particular time. I was lucky. I kept all my signs from the last election, so I've recycled. You know, 90% of the signs I'm using are the signs from the 2017 election, so I've been pretty fortunate there. But we didn't need this, and it's just been tough all around. You know, having to scramble and find, you know, equipment and everything else that we can use. I can't use my constituency office because I'm no longer the MLA, so I've had to work out at home. We've got a campaign office going. It's different, but we'll get through it. We've got another 10 days or 9 days to go. And hopefully our message is getting out there. I'm just afraid, you know, there's a lot of angry people out there that the election was called in the first place. I hope people get out and vote. That's my biggest concern.
You think, Mike, or how will that work out, I suppose, if there's another minority and say you guys have the balance of power, can you work with the Greens to form a government?
You're darn right we can. I've got a lot of time for Sonia Furstenau. I think she's a very credible, balanced individual, and so I would like to work with her, given that opportunity.
Yeah. It could be very interesting, because we could be going back to we're supposed to get out of the politics, and we'll be right back into it if we have another minority government.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
But how long are we talking before knowing for sure what the numbers are going to be?
Your guess is as good as mine, Chuck. The election's on the 24th. I think they won't be counting all the mail-in ballots and advanced polls for a couple more weeks after that. So, and then there's another time limit after that where any of the closed ones are contested. So I think we're probably into December before we figure out who might be in government.
That's a long time to have the government shut down in the middle of this COVID.
It is, and that's one of the downfalls of calling the election at this particular time. It's critical. We're in the middle of a provincial health emergency. We have a second wave coming upon the world in various areas, and government is pretty much at a standstill during this period where there's an election and determining who's government. So I think it was ill-conceived, and it should never have gone ahead. But here we are, so let's get those ballots counted, and let's get somebody in the chairs to make some decisions so that we can move forward.
Yeah, that really needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Lost my train of thought there for a minute, which is never a good thing when you're thinking and trying to come up with a question. The one of the things that I think when I talked to Shirley, or when Shirley was on and we did this, so we talked a little bit about the COVID response. And one of the things I think that she said that was interesting is that because I think I asked her what the Liberals would do differently to COVID, and she talked about how the government of the day pretty much doesn't have to, but pretty much follows the provincial health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry. So even if there was a switch in government, things on that term probably wouldn't change much, you think? Yeah.
No, they wouldn't. Bonnie Henry was brought in under our regime when we were in government as a deputy provincial health officer, because we knew that the provincial health officer of the day was retiring. And she stepped in, and she's got some great credentials, particularly dealing with pandemics and issues like that. We applaud the work that she's done. So she definitely has no fear of losing her employment if there's a change in government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all the processes and that are in place would probably be the same. So once again begs the question, I'm answering the question for you, like, why are we having an election even if we change government, the how we tackle COVID really wouldn't change?
Well, exactly. And we heard Sonia Furstenau in the debate taking Horgan to task for that as well, because they had a very solid agreement between the two parties. All three of us had agreed to let the provincial health officer take the lead on dealing with COVID issues. So they were secure. They had no worries at all. And the statutory election was coming up in one more year in October 2021. So, it was only political opportunism that caused the election to happen in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Makes much sense. I haven't been able to figure that one out yet.
A lot of people haven't.
Okay, we're getting close to our time, so I'll throw it over to Chuck, and he's got another last question for Mike.
Well, what do you see as the big differences going forward between the Liberal and the NDP approach to the next couple of years? What is the foundation that's going to be different?
Well, the foundation is jobs. So we want to kickstart the economy. Instead of giving people, a check, where you're going to get your $1,000 rebate back from the provincial government, we want to invest in infrastructure. We're going to put a $30 billion infrastructure package together, and we're going to get people working so they're contributing to the economy. Even though it's government money to start, they're still paying their taxes, Our tourism sector has been hit very hard. Our restaurant industry has been hit very hard. People need to work. If they're working, they're going to go out for dinner. They're going to go out for a drink. They're going to go on a tour, whale watching tour, whatever the case you have there. But that all stems from money being injected into the province to get it up and running. I think after probably 3 to 5 years, we'll be running on all 8 cylinders again, and we'll be making good headway economically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mike, last question. Why should people vote for you?
Well, you know, I've been around for a long time. I understand the regional importance for Prince George, but I also think that we've got a great platform. We're looking at a number of things here to try and restart the economy. People want to work. Their families are important to them, and their families need everybody to work as well. So collectively, I think we can get that going again without too much heartache over the next few years.
Right on. And with that, we will come to an end. I want to thank Mike Morris for being our guest today, and Chuck Nisbett, and we will be back again next week. We have Laura Parent on Thursday, I think, next week, and remember to get out and vote.
Great. My pleasure. Thanks very much, gentlemen.
Thanks.